A very good morning, my dear students. Here I have a saying written by Jim Rohn. Neglect starts out as an infection, then becomes a disease. So you must have wasted your time on distraction like watching TVs and using mobile phones by neglecting your studies. These gadgets were given to you for your convenience and not for your misuse. I therefore advise you not to neglect your studies and devote your time wholeheartedly to your studies from now on. So coming to our subject, today I'll be covering two main topics from the bacterial infection. So today we will be seeing tuberculosis and leprosy. First we'll start off with tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is a specific infection, a granulomatous disease caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It is commonly affects lungs, but it also affects the intestine, meninges, bones, joints, lymph glands, and skin. This disease also affects animals like cattle, and it is known as bovine tuberculosis. Moving on to the etiology of tuberculosis, Mycobacterium tuberculosis is a facultative intracellular parasite. It is rod-shaped, non-spore forming and thin aerobic bacteria called acid-fast bacilli. Due to the fact that once stained, it cannot be decolorized by acid alcohol. Its acid fastness is due to high content of mycolic acid, long chain cross-linked fatty acid and other cell wall lipids. In this picture, you can able to see the acid fast bacilli that is in rod shape. So this Mycobacterium tuberculosis is most commonly affects males than the females and it affects all ages. Now we'll see the pathogenesis of tuberculosis. So in this slide, this flowchart indicates the initial stage of tuberculosis. Usually the initial stage of tuberculosis is asymptomatic. Moving on to the pathogenesis, the interaction of bacilli and the host begins when the droplet nuclei from the infectious patients are inhaled. The majority of bacilli are trapped and exhaled by the ciliary action, but fraction less than 10% enters the alveoli. In the initial stage of host bacterial interaction, either the host macrophage control the multiplication of bacteria or the bacteria grows and kills the macrophages. The non-activated monocytes are attached from the bloodstream to the site. They ingest the bacteria which is released from the last macrophage. About 2 to 4 weeks after infection, tissue damage and macrophage activating response develops. With the development of specific immunity and accumulation of large number of activated macrophage at the site of primary lesion, granulomatous or tubercles are formed. The hard tubercle consists of epithelioid cells, Langerhans cells, plasma cells and fibroblasts. Due to cell-mediated immunity in the majority of the individual, local macrophages are activated and lymphokines are released, which neutralize the bacilli and prevents further tissue destruction. The central part of lesion contains caseous, soft and cheesy necrotic material which can be called as caseous necrosis. This may undergo calcification at a later stage called Raynaud complex in lung parenchyma and hilar lymph node. In few cases, it may undergo liquefaction and discharge into the lung leading to a formation of a cavity. A spontaneous healing occurs either by fibrosis or by collapse. In childhood, with poor immunity, hematogenous spread results in tuberculosis meningitis. This picture summarizes the pathogenesis of tuberculosis. I have indicated each diagrams with the colored arrows for your understanding purpose. Now we'll start from the blue arrow indicating picture. This picture indicates an alveoli of an infected individual. Next, we'll move on to the green arrow indicating picture. It indicates a part of an alveoli. This diagram also shows macrophage with ingested bacilli. The black arrow indicated picture shows the inflammatory response, which brings more defense cells to the area. The red arrow indicated picture shows the formation of tubercle with caseous center. Finally, the yellow arrow indicates the rupture of tubercle. From the ruptured tubercle, the bacteria spreads to the lungs and to the other organs. So this summarizes the pathogenesis of tuberculosis. Now we'll see the clinical features of tuberculosis. The general clinical signs and symptoms of tuberculosis are episodic fever and chills, easy fatigability and malaise, gradual loss of weight, persistent cough with or without associated with hemoptysis, chest pain, loss of appetite and night sweats. Tuberculosis is either pulmonary type of tuberculosis or extrapulmonary type of tuberculosis. Pulmonary type of tuberculosis may be primary, secondary or miliary type of tuberculosis. Primary pulmonary tuberculosis is seen in children but may also occur in adults. In majority of cases, it is asymptomatic. Few cases may show febrile illness and cough which may be dry or productive. The symptoms of post-primary or secondary pulmonary tuberculosis includes fever, cough, chest pain and coughing of blood. The symptoms of miliary tuberculosis in children includes acute febrile illness. The choroid tubercles are seen in children, but it is rare in adults. The symptoms in adults are anorexia, loss of weight, and fever. Bilateral crackles on auscultation, hepatosplenomegaly, and lymphadenopathy may be present. Extrapulmonary sites includes lymph nodes, genitourinary tracts, bones, joints, meninges, and peritoneum. The extrapulmonary type is seen more commonly in HIV-infected individuals. Scrofula is tuberculous infection of submandibular and cervical lymph nodes. It may progress in the formation of an actual abscess or remains as a typical granulomatous lesion. In either cases, the swelling of nodes is seen clinically. They are tender or painful, often shows inflammation of overlying skin. Abscess typically perforate and drainage of pus is seen. Tuberculosis arises as a result of lymphatic spread of organism from a focus of infection in oral cavity such as the tonsils. Primary tuberculosis of skin or lupus vulgaris may occur either in children or adult. It appears as a papular nodules which frequently ulcerates. They are particularly common on face but may occur anywhere. So this picture shows you the lupus vulgaris. Now we'll see the oral manifestation of tuberculosis. The organisms are carried in the sputum and enters the mucosal tissue through a small break in the surface. The organisms are carried to the oral tissue by a hematogenous route. It deposits in the submucosa and it proliferates and ulcerates the overlying mucosa. The primary tuberculosis involves gingiva and present as diffuse hyperemic nodular or papillary proliferation of gingival tissue. It is associated with regional lymphadenopathy. Tongue is commonly affected in secondary tuberculosis followed by palate, lip, buccal mucosa, gingiva, and frenula. It is irregular, superficial or deep painful ulcer which tend to increase slowly in size. It is frequently found in area of trauma. Occasionally, mucosal lesion shows swelling, granular, nodular or fissured lesion. Tuberculosis may involve bone of maxilla or mandible. Microorganism enters periapical tissue by direct immigration through pulp chamber and root canal of a tooth with the open cavity. The lesion produced is tuberculous periapical granuloma or tuberculoma. Tuberculous osteomyelitis is frequently seen in the later stages of disease. This radiograph shows the open cavity of a teeth, and in the periapical region I have made one marking. So that marking indicates the tuberculous periapical granuloma or tuberculoma. Now we'll see the histopathological features of tuberculosis. There will be a formation of granuloma exhibiting foci of caseous necrosis, which is surrounded by epithelioid cells, lymphocytes, and occasional multinucleated giant cells. So this histopathological picture, it shows a caseous necrosis at the center and surrounded by, you can see an epithelioid macrophage markings I have made. Then you can see an lymphocytes and you can see an horseshoe shaped Langerhans type of giant cells are seen. So these are all the important histopathological findings of tuberculosis. Now we'll see what are all the techniques used for the diagnosis of tuberculosis. The presence of acid-fast bacilli in sputum smear is the gold standard for diagnosis of tuberculosis. Imaging techniques like radiograph of affected parts like chest and tuberculin test are most useful in supplementing the diagnosis of tuberculosis. CT scan is used to diagnose mediastinal or hilar lymphadenopathy and intralesional calcification. MRI is most useful for diagnosis of extrapulmonary tuberculosis. World Health Organization defines any patient whose sputum smear is positive for acid bacilli as a case for pulmonary tuberculosis. Microscopy smear for acid-fast bacilli are stained by following methods. We will be using Z-Nielsen staining method, Quinion's cold staining method, rhodamin stain for fluorescent microscopy. A minimum of 5 acid bacilli on fluorescent microscopy and 3 on Z-Nielsen staining is reported as positive cases. The conventional Mycobacterium cultures are done on LJ medium or agar-based medium like Middlebrook medium. In this medium, it takes 6 weeks for growth of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. There are other faster methods of cultures are rapid slide culture technique and radiometric culture method. Next, we'll move on to the tuberculin test. Tuberculin test involves subcutaneous injection of 0.1 ml of 5 tuberculin units of purified protein derivatives of seabird stabilized with tween 80 or 1 tuberculin unit of PPDRT23 into the forearm. The observation will done after 48 to 72 hours. The maximum diameter of induration is measured by palpation and it is interpreted. If the diameter of the induration is less than 5 mm, we will call it as -1. The blue color circle indicates the -1. If it is 5 to 9 mm, we will term it as intermediate. The yellow color circle indicates the intermediate one. If it is more than 10 mm in diameter, we will term it as positive. The red circle indicates the positive one. And if the diameter is more than 15 mm, we will term it as strongly positive. The black circle indicates the strongly positive cases. This is how we will confirm the diagnosis of TB using tuberculin test. Moving on to the treatment of tuberculosis. For the tuberculosis patient, we will be prescribing isoniazid and rifampicin for 9 months, or we will be prescribing INH, rifampicin and pyrazinamide for 2 months, followed by INH and rifampicin for 4 months. Every year, we recognize World Tuberculosis Day on March 24th. World Tuberculosis Day is a day to educate the public about the impact of tuberculosis around the world. So far we have seen about the tuberculosis in detail. Next we'll move on to the leprosy. Leprosy or Hansen's disease is a chronic granulomatous infection caused by Mycobacterium leprae. It multiplies very slowly and the incubation period is about 5 years. It mainly affects skin, peripheral nerve, the upper respiratory tract, eyes and the testes. When it is untreated, it results in characteristic deformities. Now we will move on to the etiology of leprosy. Mycobacterium leprae is an obligative intracellular gram-positive acid-fast bacillus. It is the only bacteria to infect the peripheral nerves. It is unique in exhibiting dopa oxidase activity and acid fastness. Taking smear from the nasal mucosa of the affected person and staining with the Z-Nielsen method can demonstrate the presence of bacilli. Living leprosy bacilli appears as solid stained pink rod, whereas non-living leprae bacilli may be granular or fragmented. It can remain viable in environment for 10 days. Now moving on to the pathogenesis of leprosy. Once it is infected, both cell-mediated and humoral response are elicited by bacterial antigen DNA glycolipids. Lipoarabinomannan, a component of cell membrane, induced immune suppression by inhibiting the interferon gamma-mediated activation of macrophages. The bacteria are taken by histiocytes in the skin and the Schwann cells in the nerves. This usually results in inflammatory response. So these are all the steps that is taking place during the pathogenesis. Now we'll see the clinical features of leprosy. Clinically, leprosy is divided into 3 types, that is tuberculoid type, lepromatous type and intermediate type. First we will see the general features of leprosy, then we'll move on to the features involving each type. Generally, leprosy patients have hypopigmented patches, partially or total loss of cutaneous sensation in the affected area, thickening of nerves and presence of acid-fast bacilli are common. Now we'll see the tuberculoid type. Tuberculoid lesions are characterized by a single or multiple macular erythematous eruption with dermal nerve. The peripheral nerve trunk involvement resulting in loss of sensation and loss of sweating of the affected skin. Individuals prone to the tuberculoid type have intense cell-mediated immune response and low bacillary load. Host resistance is high in tuberculoid type. Now we'll see the lepromatous type. Lepromatous type develop early erythematous macules or papules, which leads to progressive thickening of skin and characteristic nodules. It produces severe deformities. The lepromatous type have low cell-mediated immune response and high bacillary load. Now we'll see the intermediate type. Intermediate type represents hypopigmented or erythematous macule. This usually results in inflammatory response involving histiocytes and lymphocytes. Moving on to the oral manifestation of leprosy. The oral lesion generally consists of small tumor-like masses called lepromas, which develops on tongue, lips or hard palate. These nodules shows a tendency to break down and ulcerate. Gingival hyperplasia with loosening of teeth are also common. So this picture shows a nodular mass over the hard palate. So this we will call it as lepromas. Now we'll see the histopathological features of leprosy. The typical granulomatous nodule shows the collection of epithelioid histiocytes and lymphocytes in the fibrous stroma. There will be a Langerhans type of giant cells variably present and sheets of lymphocytes with vacuolated macrophage called lepra cells are scattered throughout the lesion. These lepra cells are seen more in case of an lepromatous type, whereas less in case of tuberculoid type. Right side you can see the tuberculoid type. In tuberculoid type pattern, there is a lack of organism and they can be demonstrated only with the acid-fast staining. Whereas in left side you can see in lepromatous type. In lepromatous type, there will be an abundant amount of organism present. Now we'll see the diagnosis of leprosy. The diagnosis is based mainly on clinical and bacteriological examination. Nasal smears and scraping stained using modified Zee-Nelson method to detect the lepra bacilli at a concentration greater than 10 power 11 grams of tissue. The morphological index is a measure of the number of AFB in skin scraping that stain uniformly bright correlated with viability. The bacteriological index is a logarithmic scale measure of density of Mycobacterium leprae in dermis may be as high as 40 to 60 in untreated patient, falling by 1 unit per year during effective therapy. Other investigations includes skin biopsy, nerve biopsy and food culture histamine test. Now we'll see the treatment of leprosy. In 1981, World Health Organization study group recommended a multi-drug therapy and it consists of rifampicin, dapsone, clofazimine. Rifampicin and dapsones for 6 months in case of tuberculoid type and in case of lepromatous type, we will be advocating rifampicin, dapsone along with clofazimine for 6 months is usually advocated. World Leprosy Day is observed internationally every year on the last Sunday of January to increase public awareness of leprosy. This year, the theme of World Leprosy Day 2020 is Leprosy Isn't What You Think. So far, we have seen all aspects about tuberculosis and leprosy. I hope you have understood both the topics. If you have any doubt regarding today's subject, feel free to ask any of your doubts. For your kind information, aspects in tuberculosis is often asked 5-mark question. So try to read tuberculosis as well as leprosy by today. Thank you. Have a great day.